1 second later, the crime caught on a single camera. The rain fell in thin, silvery sheets, streaking across the deserted street as if the city itself was trying to wash away what was about to happen. A single street lamp flickered above the narrow alleyway, its glow weak against the storm. Most would have called the corner unremarkable, just another patch of concrete swallowed by night. But perched above the entrance, nearly forgotten, was a weather-stained security camera. Its red light blinked steadily, patient, unblinking, ready to witness everything. A man hurried down the slick pavement, his coat pulled tight against the wind. His shoes slapped against puddles, scattering water into the gutter. He looked ordinary, perhaps even forgettable, the kind of man who disappears in a crowd. But on this night, there was no crowd, only him, the storm, and the silent eye of the camera watching. Behind him, another figure emerged from the darkness, tall and deliberate, every step measured. Unlike the first man, this one wasn't in a hurry. He walked as though the night belonged to him, his shadow stretching across the alley like claws. The camera shifted slightly in the wind, catching the precise moment predator closed in on prey. The man in the coat glanced over his shoulder, sensing the pursuit. Fear flickered across his face before he quickened his pace, nearly slipping on the rain-slick cobblestones. His breath came in quick, panicked bursts, fogging the air. He knew he was being followed. 1 second later, the pursuer struck. A hand clamped around the man's collar, yanking him backward with brutal force. The sound of fabric tearing filled the alley as the man stumbled, his arms flailing for balance. The camera zoomed its gaze on the struggle, capturing every violent detail as if it knew history was being made. The victim screamed, but the storm drowned his voice. Only the lens, with its unblinking red eye, heard him. Lightning split the sky, illuminating two silhouettes locked in a desperate fight. The attacker's gloved hand flashed with the glint of a blade. Steel met flesh. The camera caught it all. The man gasped, his body folding forward as crimson spread across his shirt. The attacker pushed him hard, sending him sprawling to the ground. Rain pooled in the cracks, mixing with the blood that spread like ink across the canvas of the alley. For a long moment, the attacker stood above him, chest heaving, face hidden beneath the brim of a soaked hood. He stared at the broken body at his feet as if deciding what to do next. The city was silent save for the steady rain and the mechanical hum of the camera recording everything. He knelt, rifling through the victim's pockets with cold efficiency. A wallet, a phone, papers that crumpled beneath his wet gloves. He tucked the items away, then leaned close, whispering something the camera couldn't hear but the victim, barely alive, would carry to the grave. Then, just as quickly, the attacker stood and melted into the darkness. His footsteps faded into the storm, leaving behind nothing but the broken body, the spreading blood, and the blinking eye of the machine. The victim twitched, trying to rise, his fingers dragging across wet concrete. His mouth opened, a plea for help that no one answered. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the trash bins, the walls, his cooling skin. Slowly, his hand fell still. Minutes passed. The alley was once again empty. If not for the crimson trails mixing with the rainwater, one might have believed nothing had happened there at all. But the camera knew better. It had captured everything: the approach, the strike, the theft, the vanishing. Evidence etched in pixels, waiting to be found. By morning, the alley was cordoned off with yellow tape. Police officers clustered around, their radios crackling, their boots splashing in puddles. The victim's body lay beneath a white sheet, a lump of tragedy beneath the indifferent sky. Detectives crouched, murmuring theories. But it was the security guard from the corner store who spoke the words that shifted the entire case. "There's a camera up there." The detectives followed his pointing finger. The battered device clung to the wall like a relic, wires sagging from years of neglect. But the red light still blinked. Hope surged in the officers' eyes. Maybe this forgotten witness had seen what none of them had. They retrieved the footage, carrying the dusty hard drive like treasure. Hours of static and mundane street noise filled their screens, until the storm, until the chase, until the murder unfolded in stark, undeniable clarity. The room fell silent. Every officer leaned forward, their faces pale, their hands clenched. They watched the crime as though it were happening again, each second searing itself into memory. The victim's terror, the attacker's precision, the final collapse into silence. "Play it again," one detective whispered. And they did. Again and again. Each replay revealed new details. The attacker's height, the way his left hand trembled, the faint scar peeking from under the glove. The case was no longer a mystery, it was a hunt. News spread quickly. Headlines screamed about the crime caught on a single camera. Citizens who had once walked the street carelessly now looked up at cameras with a new kind of reverence. The city realized it was no longer just people watching each other. Machines were watching too, silently preserving truths no one else dared to see. The victim's family wept as detectives showed them the footage, torn between horror and gratitude. Horror at watching their loved one's final moments, gratitude that at least his death hadn't vanished into the dark unknown. The footage gave them answers. And in tragedy, answers matter. Detectives combed the city, comparing the attacker's stride, his build, his mannerisms with hundreds of suspects. But the city was vast, and shadows hid many faces. The camera had given them a story, but not a name. Still, the image burned in their minds. The way the hood sagged over his forehead, the way his blade flashed with cruel precision, the way he melted into the rain as if he belonged to it. They would find him. The city demanded it. For now, though, the footage was enough to shake the people. Citizens who had ignored the storm that night now gathered at the alley, leaving flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. Strangers stood in silence, united by a crime they hadn't witnessed but now couldn't forget. The city itself had become a witness, and witnesses never forget. The detectives enlarged the grainy frames, pulling details from the shadows pixel by pixel. A scar, a limp in his step, the faint reflection of his face in a puddle as lightning flashed. The camera had given them fragments, and fragments were enough to build a trail. Across the city, rumors spread like fire. "They caught it on camera," whispered one man in a cafe. "The whole thing," said another in the subway. The footage became legend overnight, shared in hushed tones, described with shivers. It wasn't just a crime anymore. It was a story the entire city felt it had witnessed. The attacker, somewhere out there, watched the news with clenched fists. He had thought the storm his ally, the night his shield. But he had forgotten the machine eye above the alley, the one witness he couldn't silence. Now his face, distorted though it was, glared back at him from every television screen. He packed hurriedly, shoving clothes into a bag, cash into his coat. Fear twisted his features, replacing the calm predator with a hunted man. Every knock on the door sent him stumbling for the knife at his side. Every siren in the distance made him sweat. The city itself had turned against him. Meanwhile, the victim's funeral drew crowds. Umbrellas dotted the cemetery like dark flowers. The family clung together, their grief raw and heavy. A detective stood at a distance, vowing silently to the grave that justice would come. The footage wasn't just evidence anymore, it was a promise. Night after night, the investigation deepened. Detectives cross-checked the footage with hours of surveillance from other cameras in the area, piecing together the attacker's escape route. Frame by frame, they traced him through alleys, across streets, past a neon diner sign where his hood slipped back just enough to reveal his jawline. That was all they needed. A jawline, a scar, a limp. A composite sketch emerged, plastered across police stations, newspapers, and televisions. Wanted, the posters declared, his eyes staring back with hollow menace. The city began to help. Calls poured in, some false, some vague. But one night an old woman phoned with certainty. "I've seen him," she whispered. "He buys cigarettes from the corner shop 2 streets down." Officers swarmed the location. The attacker was gone. But his presence lingered, receipts, fingerprints, a trace of blood on the counter where he had cut himself. The noose tightened. He moved through the city like a rat now, hiding in abandoned buildings, stealing food, avoiding cameras as if they were hunters. But the irony was cruel. The very machines he feared now mapped his movements. Each lens he passed became a silent alarm, each blink of red light another step toward capture. Then came the night of reckoning. The camera caught him again, stumbling into a train station, hood low, bag heavy. An officer monitoring the feeds froze the frame, zoomed in, and shouted. Units were dispatched. The predator had become cornered prey. The chase spilled into the streets, sirens howling, boots pounding. The man ran, gasping, slipping on the same kind of wet pavement where he had once hunted another. This time, there was no storm to hide him, no silence to shield him. Only flashing lights and eyes everywhere. At last, he was caught, pressed against the concrete, his hands wrenched behind his back. His blade clattered to the ground, useless now. Cameras captured his arrest, just as they had captured his crime. His story began and ended under their gaze. In court, the footage played for the jury. The room was silent except for the sound of rain, the victim's final struggle replaying on the screen. Jurors flinched, family members wept, reporters scribbled frantically. The truth was undeniable, the evidence irrefutable. The camera had spoken, and its word was law. The verdict came swift, guilty. The attacker was led away in chains, his eyes downcast, the weight of a city's judgment pressing on his shoulders. He had believed himself invisible, but he had been seen by the one witness that never sleeps. The victim's family wept again, this time in relief. They thanked the officers, the neighbors, even the old camera that had refused to die. Justice could not bring their son back, but it could close the wound just enough to let healing begin. The footage, however, lived on. It was studied in police academies, replayed in documentaries, dissected by journalists. The crime caught on a single camera became a phrase etched into the city's history, a reminder that truth can hide in unexpected places. The alley was cleaned, the blood washed away, the tape removed. But at night, people still paused beneath the lamppost, glancing up at the camera as if it were a saint guarding the street. Flowers still appeared on anniversaries, notes tucked against the wall. And the camera, faithful as ever, kept watching. Its red light blinked in the dark, a small, steady promise that even when humans fail, some eyes never close. Years later, Alina, the student who had once vanished in another part of the city, walked past the alley on her way home. She looked up, saw the blinking red light, and whispered a quiet thank you. She knew better than most that sometimes survival depends on what is seen, and sometimes justice depends on what is remembered. The city carried on. The rain fell again. Cars passed, people hurried, and the world spun forward. But above that alley, the camera blinked, remembering the night when everything changed. Because 1 second later, the crime was committed, and one camera alone had seen it all.